When they saw the way he moved and spoke, everyone made fun of him, but what no one knew was that he was the best doctor in the country. Some children are playing in a city playground when one of them sees a coin on the ground. She rushes to pick it up, but this guy named Ron, who is delivering a water jug, steps on the coin. The girl looks at him and says that if the side of the coin facing up is heads, it's hers, and if it's tails, he can keep the coin. When he lifts his foot off the coin, we see that the side facing up is tails, but Ron doesn't realize he won. The girl takes the coin and he tries to take it from her hand. The girl pulls her hand away and accidentally dislocates her finger without realizing it, and apparently without feeling it either. Ron tells the girl that her finger is fractured. She disagrees, but he improvises a splint with a popsicle stick and a hair tie. The girl's father arrives and takes her to the hospital. When they arrive there, the doctor says the girl's finger is indeed dislocated and praises the improvised splint. The doctor orders an X-ray to confirm the injury. By coincidence, Ron passes by, going to deliver a water jug to the hospital. While the father and the girl go to the X-ray room, Ron notices the man is breathing heavily and asks if he has chest pain and difficulty breathing while sleeping. The girl's father denies it, says he's fine, but you can tell he's breathing with difficulty. Suddenly, Ron's attention, and that of the hospital doctors, turns to a terrible accident. A bus collided with a truck, resulting in 15 critically injured people. There is a rush, with all the doctors running back and forth, carrying stretchers and helping people. Amidst this chaos, the father of the little girl who fractured her finger starts feeling very unwell. He's about to faint when she tries to get someone's attention and ask for help for her father, but no one has time to help him. Desperate, the girl screams in the middle of the medical ward. The doctors momentarily pay attention to her, but soon return to their tasks. A female doctor goes to the little girl and asks her what happened, and she says her father is feeling unwell. The doctor helps the man, but she needs to rush to an emergency and asks Dr. GYU to perform an X-ray and blood tests on the man. While the man is taken to undergo tests, Ron sees that the little girl is alone, gets worried because she has no one with her, and decides to go with her. He gets into the elevator, and when they're almost at the floor for the tests, the little girl's father faints. Ra and Dr. GYU lay the man on the floor and suspect he has pneumonia. GYU quickly goes to get the necessary equipment to intubate and stabilize the patient, while Ra puts his hand on the man's chest and identifies that he's having a cardiac arrest and they need to use the defibrillator. Finally, the patient is stabilized and taken to the operating table. The worst part is that there's no surgeon available, as everyone is taking care of the bus and truck accident patients. Ra stays with the little girl and she asks him to perform surgery on her father. Ra replies that he can't, that he could lose his medical license if he did that. The little girl, crying, gives him the coin and begs him to perform the surgery on her father. Ron accepts and prepares to perform the surgery, following all the hygiene steps. When he starts, the doctors are impressed by Ron's skill. In fact, he stands out even among other doctors because of how good he is. Through a flashback, we understand that Ron poses as a water jug delivery man, but in reality, he is an exceptional doctor. He lived and worked in North Korea, and it was there that a memorable incident happened, and you'll understand everything better soon. Keep watching the video. Through the flashback, we see that there was a day when the power went out while he was operating on a patient, and contrary to what everyone expected, Ron continued the operation and managed to save the patient's life. He stood out a lot in North Korea, but he doesn't have only good memories from there. Now, in South Korea, Ray stands out again. In the present, during the surgery, Dr. Hyun enters the room and notices that Ra doesn't work there. Hyun is a hardworking and dedicated girl, and she is the daughter of the hospital president. She says she will take over the patient and that Ron should leave, but he refuses and says the only way he will leave is if she takes over the patient's operation right at that moment. Hyun gets irritated at being contradicted and storms out of the room. She leaves the operating room and calls the hospital security. However, as soon as the guard goes after Ron, the surgeon has already disappeared. Hyun and the security find him in the hospital, no longer wearing the doctor's coat and holding the water jug, ready to go back to his job. She argues with Ra, but the argument is interrupted when Dr. Kim calls her in a panic and informs her that the patient has deteriorated. Already irritated, Hyun becomes furious and accuses Ra of worsening the patient's condition. Calmly, Ra says it's easy to solve. He mentions which medication and dosage should be given to the patient to stabilize him. And once again, all the medical ward staff look at him as if Ra had discovered fire. Following his instructions, the doctor manages to stabilize the patient and save him. Nevertheless, Hyun doesn't give up. She really doesn't like Ra and orders the security guards to take him away. At this point, a guy named Soo arrives to end the heated conversation between the two. Sue tells Ra that he acted wrongly, that he doesn't even work there, and suddenly he's in the operating room, putting a patient's life at risk. Sue says he will let Ron go without any punishment as long as he doesn't come back again. Before they change their minds, Ron leaves because he doesn't want to lose his medical license. Another reason he stays away from the authorities is that he uses his skills and medical license to operate on gangsters. Since these guys operate outside the law, they often get injured and can't go to hospitals. Therefore, they always turn to Rain. Ra, in turn, works for these guys and manages to receive 3 times more than he would in a legalized hospital. We see a flashback of Ra's underground work. Every day, Ron has a surprise, and on a certain day, one of the gangsters arrives with appendicitis. Even though they're wealthy gangsters, this guy's partners still cause a scene and say they won't pay. Ron is not afraid, and threatens the gangster suffering from appendicitis. The other gangsters then try to pay with a card, but Ron refuses. It's not possible that this guy, working illegally, earning 3 times more than he should, is going to register a card machine in his name. As a result, the only option left is to pay in cash, and since their companion's life is in Reen's hands, the other gangsters stop messing around and quickly pay the doctor. Back to the present, Ron arrives home after escaping from the hospital security, but as soon as he arrives home, he realizes he has company. This guy named Hyung is one of the chief doctors at the hospital. He follows Ron to his house, and when they meet, we discover that he's not there to fight, but to make a proposition. He tells Rain that he can start working at the hospital, and Rain initially says he's not interested, but he quickly changes his mind when he sees how much money he'll receive if he accepts the job. Hyung tells him that the initial payment is $50,000. It's a lot of money. Ron accepts the amount and the job, and he starts working at Myungwoo University Hospital, the same hospital where he performed his first surgery without anyone's authorization. Now let's understand how Ron became this fantastic surgeon. When he was a child, Ra and his father were forcibly taken to North Korea. Ron's father was an excellent surgeon, so North Korea wanted him. As for Ron, he was raised to follow in his father's footsteps. Ron's father worked for a long time in North Korea, and when he died, Ra took his place, working at the North Korean military hospital and saving the lives of many important government figures there. Ra had a great love, Jae, but they drifted apart over the years. However, one day a guy arrived needing a kidney, and his daughter was going to donate the organ. When Ron went to perform the surgery, he saw that the kidney donor was Jae, so he chooses to save her life instead of the guy's and decides he will flee North Korea and try to return to South Korea. He carries Jae in his arms, and together they get into the car. He manages to drive for a good distance, but they are followed by the authorities. Ra and Jae end up surrounded by North Korean agents, and with no other options, Jae sacrifices herself for Ra. He tries to save her, but Jae ends up falling into the river. When all this happens, Ra is arrested by the South Korean police and taken away from North Korea. Back in South Korea, Ra never forgets Jae. Even after so many years, he still blames himself for the tragedy that occurred. And if you're already reaching for the tissues because Ran's story is too sad, don't forget to like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next analyses. After losing Jae, Ra lived in sadness. However, after some time, he received the news that Jae hadn't died. She was alive but had been taken back to North Korea and was being held captive by the military. Upon learning this, Ron dedicates his life to saving up money to go to North Korea and rescue his beloved. Now that he has the $50,000, he can afford the trip. Ron contacts a guy who promises to take him to North Korea to rescue Jae. As proof that he really knows where she is, he shows Ra a video of Jae on his computer screen. In this footage, Jae is imprisoned, which makes Ra anxious to rescue her as soon as possible. Ra gets ready to leave for North Korea but receives unbelievable news. A friend contacts him and says she saw Jae working at a hospital. Ra believes her as his friend would have no reason to lie to him and goes to the hospital to find Jae. He doesn't find her. Frustrated, Ra suspects that the guy arranging the trips to North Korea didn't find Jae and is lying to pocket the $50,000. Ra confronts him, and the guy continues to defend the version that Jae is in North Korea, saying that Ra's friend must have seen a woman who looked like Jae and got confused. Unable to trust him, Ra only pays him half and says the other half will be paid when he sees Jae with his own eyes. A few days pass and Ra starts working at the hospital. One day, a woman arrives at the hospital in critical condition. This woman is Hyun's mother, the doctor at the hospital, and Ra's colleague. The doctors try everything, but there's no chance of her survival. However, Ra doesn't give up. He performs a procedure that goes against the rules to try to save the woman. After stabilizing her, Ra says he will operate on her, even though all the other doctors tell him not to because it's a risky operation. Hyun and her mother were distant from each other for many years, and Hyun holds a lot of resentment toward her. However, her mother briefly awakens and holds her hand, making Hyun realize that what matters is not the past, but that her mother is there now. Hyun wants the surgery to be performed, as she still hopes her mother will survive, but the other doctors say the chance of the surgery succeeding is only 5%. Ron doesn't listen to his colleagues, proceeds with the surgery, and loses the patient on the operating table. And from there, things become very complicated for him. Ron is judged by the other doctors, who say he disobeyed the rules from the beginning, providing medical care that is not in line with their training, and proceeding with a surgery on his own. Who takes the lead to accuse Ron in front of all the other doctors is Soo. However, Ron counters that Soo acts wrongly when he chooses to operate only on those patients with the highest chances of survival, and Soo has no response to that. Hyun seems grateful to Ron for at least attempting to save her mother. Later, Hyun goes to her mother's house and finds Jae there, living in South Korea under the identity of Seung. So when Ra's friend said she saw Jae, she was telling the truth, but Ra still doesn't know this. Jae opens the door to Hyun's mother's house and they enter. Inside, Hyun discovers that even though her mother was distant, she made sure to follow all her achievements. There are several letters and photos of important moments in her life, such as school events and competitions she participated in. Jae tells Hyun that her mother let her live with her father because she believed she would have a better life, but her mother never stopped loving her. Hyun becomes emotional upon hearing these words, cries, and Jae comforts her. As Jae is alive and in South Korea, Ra is notified and rushes to find her. While he goes after his beloved, Soo pursues him, and we discover that Soo is not a doctor but an infiltrator. Years ago, when Ra managed to escape from North Korea, Soo was one of the agents who tried to stop his escape. When Ra succeeded in fleeing, Soo was captured by the North Korean army and went through tough times. After all this, Soo hates Ra and went after him to destroy his life. Will he succeed in preventing Ra from finding Jae? Well, that was my analysis of the first 2 episodes of the show Doctor Strange from 2014. If you liked it, comment here for part 2 so I can bring the continuation of this show. We're in this together. Hugs from Henrique. Mission accomplished, over and out.